Hi, welcome to Teen Talk, a podcast where Jewish teens from around the world can send in questions and we'll explore the answers right here on this platform. Visit our website, jewishteentalk.com, to send in questions for future episodes. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome back to Jewish Teen Talk, episode 6. I want to welcome my daughter Racheli to this episode. Welcome, Racheli.
Hi, everybody.
So we're going to start with the first question. Go ahead.
How do we know that the stories of Torah are true? How do we know that Judaism is the actual religion? So before I answer this, I just want to say that all of the other religions kind of have a similar background story to Judaism. It's like one person who heard something from God and a bunch of people followed. Like, even though it says that 6 million people were there, how do we know that? This was 5,000 years ago?
Okay, so super valid point. How can we prove that Judaism is a true religion or that the Torah was given, right? That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I believe that the Torah was given, and this I had to check up, but I'm pretty sure it was 3,000 years ago, but still point taken. And many people were there that witnessed it having been given. But first of all, I didn't witness it, although they say that my soul was there. I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, my soul was there. Also, soul is part of the religion, so how do we know that I actually have a part of God inside of me? Maybe that part is also made up, and then my soul wasn't there because I don't even have a soul.
Okay.
I have a heart, I have stuff to make me alive, but a soul is another godly thing. That doesn't make sense.
Right, I hear you. And I think that the main point from the soul part and from the Torah being given is that we don't see any of that. We don't see our soul, we don't see God, and we didn't see Mount Sinai. Other than our souls that saw it. And at the same time, even if we say that Mount Sinai happened and it was passed down through traditions and, our ancestors saw it happening, if you ask your grandparents, did you hear God's voice? Did you get the Torah? They're like, no, I don't remember that happening. Or I've been told that happened. And then great-grandparents too. So, very valid question. Any thoughts, Racheli?
Not really. I'm just also saying, if Moshe was the one who wrote the Torah and he was the only one who saw God, first of all, the Torah is a lot of praising Moshe. The Torah is about praising him and saying how he's humble and how he led the Jewish people. So it also makes sense if one person wrote it because he's just talking about himself the whole time. So then that's also another reason why I wouldn't believe in it.
Okay. I think that it kind of sounds similar to, say, the Muslim religion, right? Where it was a prophet who came and said, I heard from God. And then that's where a lot of the religion stemmed from. Or in the case of Christianity, right? It was one guy who claimed and started the religion and everybody followed.
So a point that you have written here is we only believe in someone or something we trust. But how can I believe in someone or something I trust if I've never seen it? How do I just trust that, there's a God? Is he just one of the clouds and he's watching me? Is he part of everything? But then how am I able to move if he's part of everything? Because he's part of every particle, and every particle, it just doesn't make sense. So yes, I can't trust something if I can't see it or if I don't have proof that it actually exists. It makes no sense. Just be oh yeah, God exists. Listen to the Torah. Moshe is the best leader. Blah blah blah. If I don't see anything, I've never heard from him. All I know is that from birth, I've been keeping his mitzvahs and doing everything he asked me to. That's it that I know.
Right. Excellent points. And I'm with you too. There's that saying, seeing is believing. If you actually see it, then you're going to believe it's true. If I don't see it, then how is it true? So there's actually, the reason why I brought up the word believe is because I was like doing a bit of research into like, how do you prove that God gave the Torah? How do you prove that Moshe was the one that was chosen, right? And there's no amount of proof or evidence that's going to convince you to believe. Because belief is not connected to understanding, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense. You're right. It's like, I haven't seen God. I haven't seen my soul. I don't even know what God looks like. I don't even know what that means. But then at the end of the day, you're saying like, I've been born Jewish and I'm believing. So just going back to the idea of belief, we don't have enough, we can't ever give enough proof or evidence to make someone believe, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so the idea of belief is that it goes beyond understanding. There's also the idea that like historical facts are just facts. Like somebody who's never met, let's say, Napoleon will say he never existed. I never saw him. And the people who did see him lived years ago. They're not around anymore. So it's just a historical fact that we believe that Napoleon existed, Beethoven. And I also want to say,
I just want to say that, like, I think the only reason why people would believe Napoleon more is because it wasn't a whole miracle story. The Jews going out of Egypt, the Jews getting the Torah, the Jews going to Israel, those were all miracle stories. God splitting the sea, God making them in the desert for 40 years because somehow they got lost. Like God letting them out of Egypt. All of this was just miracles. Napoleon, he went in, he conquered many lands. The Russians won over him. Bam, he was done. There was not one miracle in there. Like it's just like a regular story. It's not a whole miracle fairy tale story of like magically escaping from slavery.
Right. That's a super, super, super good point. And I think that's why we have to just believe. We don't have to believe, but why would we believe in something that is so crazy miraculous? Like what? Like water splitting and God spoke and they heard the voice. Like, you're right. If I were to sit down and to actually logically think about the story of the giving of the Torah, leaving Egypt, I'm with you. It makes no sense.
You don't even need to sit down and think about it. You just listen to the story and you're like, wait, how did he split the sea? How was the land dry? How did they just like go into a land and get the land? How were the fruits gigantic? How did they leave a land that they were stuck in for 200 years? How, like, everything. How were there lice everywhere? How did they get boils? How were there wild animals only eating the non-Jews? Only eating the Egyptians and not them? Like, how were there lice only by the Egyptians and not them? How was there only blood water for the Egyptians? Like, every single part of that story makes no sense.
Right. I think I'm going to wrap up the question here and I'm going to end with this. I actually know of somebody who was going through the conversion process, wanting to become a Jew. And a lot of the time when I was interacting with them, a lot of the time, it was a lot about questioning miracles. Like, how did these Baal Shem Tov stories happen, right? Or how did this happen? They had to understand it. They were very smart, but they were constantly trying to understand belief. And what happened was they didn't go through with the conversion process. And I always wondered, like, what was missing or what, and I think it was the basic, what it says in Judaism is that Jews, we are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. We're believers, the sons of believers.
Yeah.
And that's just something that's been given to us. It makes no sense. It's not logical. We don't see it to believe it. We just believe it's something that's been given to us, whether we're tapped into it or not. And I hope that answers a bit of the question. I know we didn't get into it in detail, but it definitely opened up a rich discussion.
Yeah, it definitely did. The next question is, why do we dress tznius and what does God gain from us dressing tznius? So I think this question makes a lot of sense because tznius is dressing modestly. So if like covering your elbows, covering your knees, and those stuff like that. So if tznius equals modesty, I can still be modest by wearing a t-shirt and jeans. That's still modest. Like, modest doesn't have to mean that I'm wearing a skirt covering my knees or cover my legs during the summer so that I'm sweating. That's not modest. That's sneas. Like, sneas is not a synonym of modest because those are two different stuff. Like, you can't say sneas is modest.
So actually, if you Google modesty, like the actual word modest, it says unassuming or moderate in the estimation of one's abilities or achievements. And then synonyms are like self-effacing, self-deprecating, humble, unassuming. And then a few numbers down, it says dressing or behaving so as to avoid indecency, especially to avoid attracting sexual attention. And that, if you just go with the Google definition, is what modesty is about. So it's basically about covering up a person or hiding behind oneself or whatever they're wearing or however they're acting so that they don't attract that kind of attention.
So then why do we associate sneas with modesty if that's what's not sneas is about? I myself don't know what sneas is about because I've never gotten a clear answer. So, but why do we associate with modesty if modesty is just to protect ourselves from sexual attraction? Like, if that's what modesty is, why are we putting the two together? Because I don't think God cares. Like, I don't think it's part of God's plan to make sure that Jewish women are not attractive. Like, I don't think that was part of his plan.
100%. 100%. So that's why I looked up the definition on Google, because a lot of the time the definitions that we have like maybe a negative connotation towards a certain word. So that's why I wanted to define it, let's say, according to Google, if someone were to, check it up. But according to Yiddishkeit, according to Judaism, what does modesty mean? So I think before going back to the question of what does God gain from us dressing modest and why do we need to dress modest, the way that God asked us, I think we need to define it according to Judaism, not according to Google.
I guess
so. Right?
Like, why not?
So there is a saying in the Torah that, and you probably heard it yourself, Kol kvuda bas melech penima. The beauty of Kol kvuda bas melech penima, that the true beauty of a princess is from within. If God, so I'm going to say it how I learned it in school, and then we'll delve into it and see if it speaks to you. But that God is, so to speak, the king, right? The king of all kings. And then we're like a Jewish princess. And so what I was shown as a teenager and as a girl was that the same way that, let's say, like Princess Diana, because she was a princess then, or Queen Elizabeth, the same way like they would dress modestly, right? They won't just like show parts of their body. And that's how we are lucky to dress as Jewish princesses.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so modesty is not about trying to not attract sexual attention or about hiding my body because I should be self-effacing or, trying to hide behind whatever I'm wearing. The idea of modesty is that I'm respecting my body. It's about self-respect, not about self-deprecation, self-effacement. It's about self-respect. It's about the fact that I respect my body, and out there, women's bodies are objectified. They are. Like, women are not appreciated for who they are based on how they dress and how they... And modesty is not just about how we dress. It's also in behavior. It's the way we speak. And that's how I define modesty. And from what I understand in Judaism, it's self-respect.
Okay, so then if it's self-respect, then why does God get to give us rules on how we have self-respect? Like, why can't I respect my body the way I want to? Why do I have to respect my body by doing stuff that God wants me to? Like, why does me wearing a skirt under my knee have any more self-respect than me wearing a skirt a tiny bit over my knee? Like, what's the difference? Like, there's no literal respect that I'm having for myself. It's just that my skirt is over my knee. Like, it's literally nothing. And also, when I'm wearing pants, I'm still covering my knee. You don't see my knee.
Right. And I think it's really connecting, Hallie, like what you're saying, it's connecting to the other question too. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Like the way that God made the rules for tznius and for modesty is like it has to be, above the collarbone, under the elbow. Like if you think about the actual rules and guidelines of modesty, you're right. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense when it's hot outside and I'm walking around with nylons when they're pretty see-through. Why do I even need to put them on my legs? So it doesn't make sense. But you're right. And I think that it's important to also acknowledge and be honest with ourselves where we're holding with tznius, with modesty. Like for me, let's say it's hard for me to... So it could be some area on modesty. Maybe as a married woman, it's hard for me to like keep my hair completely covered with my head covering all the time. And just acknowledging that that's where I'm holding, that it's difficult for me and maybe I don't understand it. I'm going to try to do as best as I can. And I think it boils down to, again, it's just because God asked.
So the last question we have is, I have a friend who is starving herself and can't eat. I'm really worried about her, but I don't want to ruin our friendship by getting help behind her back. So before my mother starts answering this, I just want to say that I kind of had a similar story. So about 2-3 years ago, I had a friend who came to me and told me I'm suicidal, and I didn't know what that word was. So I was like, "You're committing suicide today?" She's like, "No, I just have the idea in my head that I will be okay if my life ends." So I was like, "Okay, that's really bad. No one should be okay with their life ending. Everyone should want to live it out, see what's gonna happen, because your life will get better." So she's like, "Don't tell anybody. If you tell anybody, I won't be your friend, blah, blah, blah." And of course, I went and told somebody. Okay, I didn't do it at first. Then I was like, you know what? Why am I keeping this a secret? If she might kill herself, I don't want to lose her. So I went and I did the worst thing I could do, and I went to tell the school social worker. So the school social worker calls me and my friend in together in the room, and she says, to my friend, she's like, "Your friend is really worried about you. She told me my friend stormed out." I come home after school, my friend calls me and she just starts cursing me out, screaming at me like I'm such an idiot. Why would I tell her? Blah, blah, blah. And then we didn't talk for a week. And then she started getting help and we started becoming friends again. And I haven't been in touch with her in a few years, but thank God she's still alive, and yeah, so I think it probably helped when I told somebody, even though it was a really bad idea.
So, just for reaching out and trying to get help for a friend, or at least trying to get help for yourself too, to figure out what to do, is being a good friend. And in my own experience, when I was anorexic in grade 9 and then grade 10, there were a lot of other people that were worried about me, but they didn't necessarily know what to say or what to do. I just remember one friend's mother saying something to me that was caring. Otherwise, I think everybody didn't know what to say to me and they kind of stayed away. So it takes a tremendous amount of courage that you were able to, recognize I want to save this friend and I'm going to do something about it. And what you said, the friendship is so important that I don't want to lose this friend. Yes, you're going to be a good friend, but you're not going to have a friend anymore. I remember the school social worker actually sharing that with me too. So just that idea that if I hold on to this piece of information, let's say this friend, the question that it's a friend who's starving herself, it can be fatal. When I was anorexic, thank God my mom intervened and I was able to get to an eating disorders doctor and to get to the hospital. But, when people don't have that help as quickly as they need it or from, the right place, it can go downhill.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that it also depends on the situation. If it's something that's not life-threatening, then you shouldn't say. If you don't have to tell someone, you shouldn't say. Also, you should tell the right person. Like, I told the school social worker, even though I knew she wasn't the right person, but she was she was the first person I thought of. She was the closest person, so I told her. But I think that I could have waited a little bit and told someone better, and the situation could have worked out different, because there was like a change in our relationship. We did feel more distant because of that, and I think like it could have turned out different. And you just also have to tell the right person. Like, it's not only about telling someone, it's also telling the right person who will actually help.
Right, and they say that, like, tell a trusted adult, right? Somebody that can actually help the situation. But at the same time, like, even when it gets rocky in the middle, or your friend doesn't respond by like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saving my life, and she's kind of like disconnecting, at the end of the day, she will recognize like, wow, you took that step to help me and to be there for me. And like, being a bystander and doing nothing is not being a good friend. I think, can we agree on that?
Yeah, for sure.
I've actually had that too with a friend, where I had to say something that was very difficult, but in the end, she did get upset with me, but then she, after a while said, wow, thank you for doing that. That was really brave. I've had people do the right thing for me, that in hindsight, like, then I was really upset, but then I realized that they were being a really caring friend.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that like what I want to end off with in this episode, and if you have anything to add, Racheli, is that there is help out there. There are a lot of resources.
And reach out to the right people. Like, don't just reach out to anybody. Reach out to the right people, and people who can actually help the situation and help you get through this.
100%. Racheli, thanks so much for being on this episode, and we look forward to future ones.
Thank you for having me.